If you want to understand how fragile modern water systems really are, study how ordinary people survived when those systems did not exist or could not be trusted. During World War II, civilian water security became a silent battlefield. Bombing campaigns shattered municipal lines, fuel shortages crippled pumping stations, and entire neighbourhoods were cut off from centralised supply with little warning. Families who had water survived. What emerged during those years were cistern designs so efficient, discreet and independent that many post-war utilities later moved to restrict or outlaw them. Not because they failed, but because they worked too well outside centralised control. By the early 1950s, as cities rebuilt and utilities consolidated power, regulations quietly appeared that discouraged or outright banned private water capture and storage at scale. What follows is not theory or folklore. These are historically documented cistern designs that kept households, farms and small communities functioning during total disruption, and which still outperform many modern systems if applied correctly today. Why wartime cisterns were designed for resilience instead of convenience. World War II cisterns were not built for comfort. They were built for continuity. Designers assumed electricity might vanish, pipes might rupture, and repairs might take months. As a result, most cisterns relied on gravity-simple filtration and, redundancy. Walls were thick, often reinforced with stone, brick or concrete scavenged from bomb debris. Access points were minimal to reduce contamination. Overflow systems were deliberate rather than accidental. Modern homeowners can apply this thinking immediately by prioritizing passive water flow, manual access and storage that does not rely on pumps to function. The buried, gravity-fed cistern that survived bombing and frost. One of the most common wartime designs was the fully buried cistern placed downhill from roof catchment. This design protected water from freezing, shrapnel and evaporation. Water entered through ceramic or metal downspouts, passed through a sand and charcoal chamber and settled in a dark underground tank where algae growth was minimal. A simple hand pump or bucket access allowed retrieval without power. Today, this same approach works by placing storage below frost depth, using modern food-safe liners, and relying on gravity rather than pressure. The multi-chamber settling cistern that purified water without chemicals. Another highly effective design used sequential chambers. The first chamber caught debris and sediment. The second slowed water flow to allow fine particles to settle. The third stored only clarified water. No chemicals were required. Maintenance involved periodic flushing of the first chamber. Modern users can recreate the system using concrete rings or modular tanks, gaining reliable pre-filtration before any modern treatment is applied. So, the shared courtyard cistern supplied entire apartment blocks. In those dense European cities, families would, pool their resources together to build courtyard cisterns that were fed by multiple roofs. Often these were cleverly disguised as decorative wells or even planters, just to avoid being targeted. And, access was strictly rationed and scheduled. The lesson here really is all about scale and cooperation. Even today, shared water infrastructure among trusted neighbours, it dramatically increases resilience and honestly reduces the burden on each individual. Now, the narrow-profile wall cistern was one that utilities later started to target. Some of the most controversial designs were these slim cisterns built right inside exterior walls or tucked between buildings. They managed to capture rainwater almost invisibly and could store thousands of litres, all without altering the skyline in the slightest. After the war, utilities actually viewed these systems as a sort of unmetered competition, you know. These days, modern equivalents can be installed indoors, usually along basement walls, using vertical tanks that save space and stay protected from the weather. The overflow to irrigation cistern really wasted nothing at all. Wartime farmers, quite ingeniously, designed cisterns with intentional overflow channels that led straight to gardens or livestock troughs, so excess water never ended up in the drains. Modern homesteaders, well, they can actually replicate this by directing overflow to swales or raised beds, turning heavy rainfall into stored fertility. The sacrificial first flush system, it really protected drinking water back in the day. During the Second World War, cistern builders were well aware of the risks of roof contamination. First flush diverters became pretty common, allowing that initial dirty runoff to bypass storage entirely and keep the water cleaner. This method actually protected drinking water without the need for filters. Nowadays, a simple diverter pipe or valve can accomplish the same goal, and, well, it comes at minimal cost. The winter-sealed cistern now, that was a clever bit of engineering to keep water usable all year round. In cold climates, cisterns were sealed tight with layered lids, straw for insulation, and a good covering of earth. Ice would form on the surface, but the water below, interestingly enough, stayed liquid. This approach still works, and honestly is far more reliable than exposed tanks or shallow barrels. The camouflaged emergency cistern, hidden in plain sight. Some cisterns were deliberately disguised as fuel tanks, compost pits, or even structural supports. Their purpose was survival, not aesthetics. While camouflage is less necessary today, discreet placement still remains valuable in preventing tampering or contamination. The maintenance first design, it really outlasted the war itself. Perhaps the most important lesson here is that the World War II cisterns were designed to be cleaned, repaired and understood by ordinary people. There were no proprietary parts, none at all. Every component was accessible. Modern systems often fail because, well, they're just too complex. Simplicity, it really does remain the strongest form of resilience. Why were these designs restricted after the war, and why do they still matter today? As centralised water systems expanded during the 1950s, many municipalities went ahead and restricted large private cisterns, often under the guise of sanitation and control. But honestly, the real issue was independence. These systems, they reduced reliance on utilities. Nowadays, with aging infrastructure and all this climate volatility, the logic behind wartime cisterns is making a bit of a comeback. The knowledge, it never really disappeared. It was simply sidelined. If this kind of practical history matters to you, and if you believe, like I do, that resilience is built through understanding rather than just gadgets, well, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to share this video with someone who values self-reliance and lessons that have already been tested under pressure.